And the contractor ends up losing everything, so he didn't pay us for any of it.
Oh my gosh.
So I just buy the equipment twice for 2 hotels, and the contractor didn't even pay us. Went under.
Yeah.
Had somebody else finish the job, and it sunk us.
All right, today on the podcast, we have Brett Walker of Walker Plumbing. So Brett, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast. We're really excited for this one. So we want to talk about the journey from starting the business to, you've had 100 employees plus throughout that time. But I want to go back to kind of what it is at the beginning. First off, this is your second plumbing company, which I think is just fascinating, right? And I want to go back to that first one. So you had one that you started, I think you mentioned in 2002, right around that time frame, right? How did you get into the business? Like what led you down this path?
Yeah, so I started out plumbing in high school. Once I got my journeyman's license, and then I just, of course, working for other people, and I see them, and I can see what they're making and how it works. And at the time, I just started doing a little bit of side work, because it was a new construction company and they allowed it. So doing a little bit of work here and there. And I thought at the time, like, I can do that. And I just created my own company through the state, got it all legal and ready to go, and started just talking to people. That's all it took to start with. I found one person that was he was an electrician, and he had a contractor, right? And I got in with one guy. That was it. And that got me started.
So before that, you had worked for a company for a little while?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you worked for one, and then finally you're like, wait a minute, I could probably do this on my own. I haven't run a business before,
right?
But I kind of have an understanding of what it is I'm doing. I know how to do the actual work. I'm going to go try to figure out how to start the business.
Yeah. And the worst part of all that was I worked for my father-in-law, right?
Okay.
At the time, worked for my father-in-law, and they were the worst bosses ever. They would scream at you constantly, all the time. And I swore I would never be that kind of boss. And so now I'm actually way too laid back, rather than totally opposite from what they were. But,
okay, good. That was a good experience.
Right? Yes.
So then you did that, and you go, okay, I can do this on my own. And then you go to the state, you file everything, and then you're like, okay, great, I'm ready, I'm open for business.
Yeah.
What the heck do I do now?
And it took a while, right? Because it doesn't come easy, but it's like I just started talking to everybody I knew, different trades, electricians, other plumbers, and other contractors. And just had to open my mouth, which I was not good at. I was always shy, quiet, kept to myself. But I finally found one that needed a small remodel job, and gave him a price to do it. Did the job, and he liked me. We hit it off, and he started sending me work constantly. And I already still had my job, so this was all after hours. And went back to my wife at the time, and we're like, let's do this.
Yeah.
How long did it take? So when you opened the business, and then you started calling around trying to get some, how long did it take before you got a job to work on?
Oh man, it was probably about 4 months in between there. I was doing small little things for people that I knew, but trying to find the right person that would actually give me a contractor to work for. Probably a solid 4 months of just constantly asking, looking, searching.
So it was a side hustle for you initially.
Oh, yeah.
So you had the main job,
Yep.
and then this was a side hustle. It took 4 months before you got that.
Yep.
And then so it was the side hustle for a little while. How long did it take from it starting out as a side hustle before it became the main hustle?
So, like I said, it took me about 4 months doing side hustle, finding this guy. I started doing new construction with him, new homes. So doing a lot of different remodels with them, new homes. I started doing, and then I finally quit my job because I was doing these new construction homes, and it took all my time. And I only worked for this guy for a few months, full time. And he says, Brett, I have 300 homes, and this is in Salt Lake,
Okay.
right? He says, I have 300 homes in St. George, and I want you to do all of them. I knew nothing. I knew no one in St. George. I'm like, I'm in, let's do it. I'll go find the people, hire them, do what I need to do. So I started traveling back and forth. We did a few homes at first. I found a lot. I bought a lot, and I'm building my house, right? My house is framed in Leeds, and we're doing about 4 homes with him so far. And he came to me and he says, Brett, my deal fell through. I'm going back to Salt Lake.
Oh,
Wow.
And I'm stuck
How-
here. I've got my house framed. I'm here. All of his stuff was gone.
And that was just within a few months of you coming
Yep.
down here?
yikes.
Yeah. So I was doing back and forth. It was about a total of 6 months at that time. And I'm here. I'm committed.
And what year was this?
2002.
Okay, so it was pretty dead in St. George at that
Yep.
time.
It was actually
Okay.
actually picking up. So at the time, luckily, I found some other plumbing buddies of mine, and he started giving me work because he couldn't keep up with his.
Oh.
So he was subbing the plumbing out to me. That got me started. Finally, I found some contractors, and I started doing new construction on my own.
What was it like that moment? Oh, sorry. Sorry. Do you have something? I tend to jump in and I'm like, I got all these
Right?
questions and I'm
Yeah.
I'm going to fire them away because I want to know. But go ahead. Sorry.
So I was just going to ask, so what was the experience for your wife at the time like?
Oh my gosh.
Where was
When he
she?
told me my house is framed, we actually moved down to a rental. So we're all here committed. And he told me that. And I go home and I'm like, we have nothing. All my work's gone. We got to finish these last 2 and that's it. And of course, that's what I was banking on.
Yeah,
And just gone. And it just makes you feel sick, right? It's like back to square one.
yeah. So was she pretty supportive through the whole
She was.
process?
I was very grateful for that. She was very supportive. Her dad, of course, was a plumbing contractor.
Oh,
Worked for him.
oh,
So
yeah.
she understood that world. And so she was very supportive of it.
That's good. That helps.
So you're in that moment and you just find out this news, right? You're thinking, I've got my family, I've got my house, I've got all of this stuff, right? And sometimes when people have that moment, like it takes a while before you can see the path where you're going to go down, another road, right? Or you're going to pivot. During that time, what was it like? Did you experience a lot of fear? Were you like, I'm just not going to be able to make this work? We're going to have to either move or I don't know, or I'm going to lose everything or whatever,
Yeah. Because I'm paying rent and I've got this house that's almost framed and I had nothing. So again, I was back to square one and I went back to like opening my mouth, right? I hated it. It was just, I'm still not that great at it, but I started talking to people. I was starting hitting up. I would driving and seriously knocking on doors, basically. I would see construction signs of the contractor. I'm calling every single one of them. So I'm driving around these neighborhoods, all these new construction areas, calling every single contractor I can find. They're like, we have a plumber. We have a plumber. I go, can I give you a bid anyways? Let me give you a price. Let me compete. Finally found a few that let me get them pricing. And I'm on my own, so I can beat their pricing at the time.
Right.
Right?
So in that scenario, I know there's a lot of people out there like that. They're like, I can't talk to people.
Yeah.
I'm an introvert. Like, I don't even know how to get started. What was your mindset at the time to like push you into that discomfort?
I had no other choice at the time.
So, like, what was the self-talk? You're just like, I can do this. Like,
Yeah.
just, it doesn't matter if they say no, just keep going.
That's what it was. And I was a little bit easier talking to contractors for me.
Yeah.
But at the time, it still was so many rejections, right? All the time.
Did it get easier?
It did get easier over time, but it's just pushing through that.
Yeah.
And once you find one that says yes, then it's like a boost.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
oh, I can do this.
Yeah. I think growth happens during our most difficult times, because even if you have something like your personality isn't like to go out there and start talking with a lot of people, when your back's against the wall and your survival's there, right? Your survival's on the line. You're like, okay, this is going to push me past to do whatever I need to do. I don't want to go knock on doors. Like, that's terrifying for a lot of people. But it's like, I've got my family, I've got all this stuff I've got to do. I've got to just go and knock on doors and try to figure this figure this out and go
Yeah.
through it. And then it's like you knock on that first door and it's like, no, dang it.
Right.
And then it's like to go to the second door, I feel like it's harder. The second door I feel like is harder than the first door because now I just got rejected, but I've got to find that motivation or that courage, more courage to just, I got to just keep knocking doors until some point in time, hopefully somebody says yes or they chase me out of here.
Yep.
You know?
Got to burn those ships.
Right. So as I'm doing this, I finally found enough work to do a bunch of homes, and it's still me doing all the work by myself. And I again called one other contractor, and he says, Brett, my plumber just quit mid-job. And it's the Holiday Inn Hotel off the Hurricane exit.
Mm-hmm.
It's a massive hotel, and I'm on my own.
Mm.
I'm like, let's do it. I'm like not turning anything away.
Yeah.
And it's not even close. It's framed with no plumbing done.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like, 100%,
job.
let's do it. Made some calls to my some of my buddies who are also plumbers. So that's where I took on my first partner. Brought on my brother-in-law, who was my best friend. Moved him up here from Vegas, and I gave him 50-50 partnership with my company free. Just come on.
Needed
Do
some
you
help.
regret that?
Didn't even charge him. Do I regret that? You know what? It ended not good.
So you have that moment where you've got some jobs, you're starting to pick up a little steam, you're like, hey, I need a little bit of help. And that's when you go, okay, I'm going to bring on a partner. Did you have any employees at that point in time, or it was still just you?
Just me.
And so the first employee is like, or first person is like, hey, I need some help here, but let's partner up on this and do this together.
And so once I got him here and he agreed and we came to an agreement with it, we started this job together, the two of us, and we're like, yeah, we of course can't handle this on our own. So we reached out to our other friends that we knew that are plumbers, brought them on as our employees, and we were able to hire 14 guys within a really short time to do this hotel job. And
Was that your first time hiring employees as well?
It was.
Okay.
And it was scared the crap out of me. I mean, I'm used to doing just small homes. When I worked for my father-in-law at the time, the first company, it was all new or commercial work. So I'm comfortable with doing it, but I've never done it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And so we hired all these guys doing this big job. First time ever. I'm like, hopefully my pricing is right. Right?
Hopefully there's a profit at the end of this. I have no idea.
Just winging it.
I love that.
And we actually made pretty good money on it. And I'm like, oh, we got to keep this up.
That's the thing, is a lot of times people a lot of people will wing it and you just kind of figure it out, right? And a lot of people think that you need to have all of this stuff. You need to know all of this stuff. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. If you spend all the time trying to learn and know it, you might miss the opportunity. So sometimes you got to go with a gut feeling and just wing it and just figure it out. And I love that, how it's like, I don't know if we're going to make a profit on this or not. I sure hope so.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the expenses are. I've never had employees. I'm still figuring out a lot of that stuff with the accounting. How the expenses are going to come up, and we don't know if the pricing is right. We're going to have to just kind of figure it out and go from there. That's incredible.
But by taking that one job, we're almost finished with the job. The contractor for La Quinta in Bloomington, contractor calls me up, hey, I know you're doing the plumbing on that one. I want you to do this one. So immediately we were able to land that job, jump straight to the next hotel. And that's what we did for quite a few years, doing big hotels from St. George to Tremont.
And so what time frame was that you were doing the big hotels?
Oh man. So it started probably in 2005.
Okay.
I think, right around that area. And so we had some good years until, of course, 2009 hit.
Yeah.
We were in the middle of 3 hotels at that time in Provo, Orem, and one further north.
How many employees did you have at that point in time?
We had about 18 to 20 employees.
Okay.
And were you split between St. George and Salt Lake?
Yes, we were. But at the time, most of them were in Salt Lake, that Utah County and Salt Lake area, so they were split up in that area. Yep.
So you have all these jobs going, you've got the 20 employees, and then things just kind of moved just quickly where the hotels, they just halted work, or what happened there?
So, all right, I'll tell you. So we brought on a third partner.
Okay.
Not my decision, but I agreed.
Okay.
And it was my brother-in-law's brother-in-law.
Oh, boy.
right? So it's all his
Got a
big
All
brother-in-law
family.
train
Yes,
going
right?
on here. Okay.
So we bring him on to do the heating and air side. So we're doing plumbing and heating and air.
Okay.
So he comes on, starts bidding all the heating and air side. So we start doing heating and air a couple years prior to this, right?
Mhm.
Bring that up, but he starts basically dealing drugs to most of our employees,
Oh my gosh.
to the heating and air crew. And he's bidding these jobs, giving them drugs, and he's telling them, don't worry, I know when they're going to do drug tests, I'll let you know.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, and me and
Wow.
my partner had no clue until some of the employees are acting a little weird, right?
Oh man.
And so what it came down to is, and it all hit at the same time in 2009, he underbid a job. He underbid
one.
2 hotels side by side. And instead of putting in the correct equipment, what's spec'd out, he went and got cheaper equipment installed in 2 hotels, which is against everything. You cannot do that. So they go do the inspection, they catch it, say rip it out. But what's spec'd in? And so we had to rip it all out. You can't return it.
Oh my gosh.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars, right?
Wow.
And then we go buy all of it again. So we're already negative over $500,000
Oh.
on the job on each one. And then we go to put it all back in, and the contractor ends up losing everything. So he didn't pay us for any of it.
Oh my gosh.
So I just buy the equipment twice for 2 hotels, and the contractor didn't even pay us. Went under.
Yeah.
Had somebody else finish the job, and it sunk us.
Yeah.
How long did that take to, take place from when you do that and you've got this job and you're thinking, okay, this one's gonna be good, to where it's all of a sudden like we're done. It seems like it was somewhat of a fast.
It was like so fast. We ended up firing like 8 guys on drugs and crazy, and our partner, and then me and my other plumbing partner, my other buddy, like we're trying to keep it going, but that's when it just so fast. Like I tried to finish the jobs out, hoping the other guy would pay us. Never ended up getting paid.
But at that time, it's like, were you able to just clean house and like then
So at
start
that
fresh?
point-
You're like, I don't have to worry
Right.
about these partners anymore. And-
So at that point, I'm over $1 million plus in debt, right?
Mm.
On all of our suppliers were like, I don't know, it was
Bad.
out of control. We had like 14 vehicles that we bought for everyone.
Mm.
And of course, I get these guys knocking on my door all the time trying to take the vehicles back.
Right.
I was done. So I went and I emptied these vehicles and I drove it to the lot. I says, here's the keys, take it.
Yeah.
I'm done with you guys chasing me down for them. And that did not go well with my partner. He did not like that. He wanted to hide it, keep them,
Oh my
just
goodness.
keep working with them. But of course, everything was in my name, 100%, all of the debt.
So you went in a short period of time where you have this business that's thriving, and hey, we're growing, we're doing well, to we don't have a business anymore, and I'm out of money and in debt.
And it
Wow.
killed me. My house up on the hill, really nice home that I had, they took it. They knocked on the door and took my personal vehicle. They took my wife's vehicle, all of my toys, my house, gone, everything.
Oh my gosh, because your partner screwed up some jobs.
Yep.
Jeez.
And so even if he didn't screw up, I look back at both ways. Like, yeah, I wouldn't have been in debt as much, but they still lost. They probably still wouldn't have paid me, but it was so much, everything all at the same time.
That must have been a really challenging time, just with everything there.
Yep. And it sunk me. Like, I didn't have a paycheck for myself. I didn't bring a single dollar in from working for like 8 months.
Wow.
And I was had enough that I was saving, which made me survive until it didn't. And at the time, luckily, I collected guns, and that saved my life because I would sell guns to put food on my table.
Okay.
That's how I survived until I was almost out and I had to go get a real job.
How did that experience change how you operated in business going forward?
So for my next business,
Did it make it where you were like, okay, either I'm going to be really careful about how I leverage things, or I'm not taking on another partner ever?
absolutely. Oh my gosh. Number one, never a partner again in a business like this. I never would do it. Number two, when I started my next company, I paid cash for everything. Never had a loan on a single vehicle, equipment. I paid cash for everything.
I find that sometimes those experiences, because I've had an experience that was similar where I lost a lot, but I find that those experiences can sometimes later on be a bit a gift. It doesn't feel like it in that moment, but it changes how you operate everything so that the next time, if you go through another struggle again, you're just in a different position.
Yeah.
So in your case, you're like, there's from a bit as far as a business partner goes, right? I think that I can trust them completely and they can handle everything, but I don't know. They're human. They might be doing something on the side that can really impact my
Right.
life, and that's just too risky going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. So at that time, I've lost everything. We finally, I move on. I ended up going to Vegas for almost a year, traveling back and forth. I took my fifth wheel down, my trailer, lived in an RV park, and I'd come home on the weekends just to make enough to get by.
Mm-hmm.
And it was with a service company. And I've never done service plumbing in my life until I went down there, and I just took anything just to get by, right? And it was the coolest thing ever because that's when it opened my eyes to the service side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And once I was able to learn that, I'm like, of course, in my mind, I can do that. Right? So I take everything I learn as much as I can and I bring it back. And my wife's like, no, we are never starting another business.
Not going through this again.
Never again. I says, well, I already did. I didn't tell you, but it's licensed and legal. And I go to the state. It was almost legal. The state wouldn't let me because, of course, I was bankrupt and all this stuff that happened. I said, you need a $50,000 bond.
Mm.
$50,000 cash
I didn't know
that
they
I had to
did
come
that.
up with. I had to go and sit in front of like 15 people at this big table and plead my case and why it won't happen again. I says, A, I'm going to pay cash for everything, and I'm not doing new construction ever again like this, and just did my thing. And I was able to scrape by enough money to, after I sold some other stuff that I had, came up with 50 grand cash. Here you go.
During this process, when you were starting this new business, did you ever have any self-doubt that like, some fear of like, I maybe I shouldn't start a business again. Maybe I shouldn't go down this road. Like now I have some capital again, Did you have some self-doubt there that you had to get past?
Absolutely. So at the time we had plane tickets bought to Texas because we were going to go buy a house in Texas because it was so busy out there. We could get work and just work for someone.
Mm-hmm.
And in the back of my head, I was just like, I can't do that. I can't work for another company forever. But of course, I was scared to death.
Yeah.
Trying to start a company again. And how am I going to find the work? Starting a new service company. How am I going to get the people to find me? I didn't have a clue about that side of things.
Right.
I just was winging it again. And it was just really by the word of mouth how I started my company.
So it took a year or so from when the other one closed, and then you had the 9 months where not much was going on, and then you start working for the other business in Vegas, going back and forth, where you're like, okay, I see an opportunity here. There's a lot of things that I don't know, but I'm going to dive in and just try to figure it out as I go.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started my company, the Walker Plumbing, I had this white van that I went to another heating and air company in town. and it was sitting there, right? And I go, I need a van. So I went and knocked on their door. Hey man, I see your van sitting here. It hasn't moved for a while. Do you want to sell it? He's like, no, I'm not really interested in selling it. I go, well, I've got this 30-30 lever action rifle. You interested in this? He's like, oh, heck yeah. I go, let's do it. So I says, I'll give you this rifle and whatever else. I think I paid him like $2,000 extra because it was just a beater van, right?
Yeah.
I gave him my rifle. That's what made him want to do it. And I actually went back to him, tried to buy it back, but he had sold it. But that got me my first van. I just put on Walker Plumbing and my cell phone number on it, and it looked like crap. And that's how I started. And then I didn't know how to market and advertise, so I'm knocking on doors selling water softeners, water heater flushes, anything. I'm knocking on doors, and they look out and see my van, and they're like, I don't know about that.
Like this janky.
But then I joined a networking group, and that's what took off.
The networking group did.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So
Joined that
how long?
down.
So how long were you knocking doors before you had some success with the networking group?
It took me, I was trying to join it, and they wouldn't let me in because they already had a plumber in there.
Mhm.
So I had to wait and trying to get in, and they finally had one. So it was probably a good 6 months of
Okay.
just trying to do whatever I can on my own.
Got it. Just knocking doors, trying to get whatever job that you can, and it's
Yeah.
just you, right? No employees. It's
Yeah.
just you doing everything.
And we had done the math and budgeted everything. I had to make, I think it was $198 per day to pay our bills for the month. If I could make that every single day, that would pay my bills.
Okay.
That was my goal and my only number in my head at the time.
That was like personal and business.
Yes.
Okay.
That was
So you're like, I've got to make this every day, and I'm just going to keep
which is
asking until
very little because I didn't have anything at the time.
right.
We'd lost everything, but I'm starting over. That's all I had to do to pay my bills. Because I
Okay.
bought some piece of junk truck, paid cash for it, so I didn't have any loans on much. But that's what we had to needed to survive.
Now, when you lost everything, your house, your toys, how did you what was your strategy for building back your credit and getting into another house and
Right? That, you know what? So I found this house that was for sale. They lost it. It was bank owned. And I'm like, gosh, that house is awesome. It'd be perfect for us. And so I went and I put an offer on it, and my credits, I can't. They're like, nope. And so I went to one of my buddies of mine, and I says, hey man, I've got this house. I've saved up 50 grand. I asked him to buy the house in his name. I'll pay him 50 grand cash, and it was basically buying it through him, right? And then he would refinance it to me in 1 to 2 years is what the agreement was. And he says, let's do it. So I hated banks because even every one of my kids' bank's accounts, the banks drained it. They took all my kids' money, all of our money at the time, right? So I was this hoarder of cash at the time. So I show up to his doorstep in a brown paper bag with 50 grand in cash. And he's like, yeah, bring me the money. Let's do it. So I show up, and he's like, I didn't think you were going to bring the cash. I've never seen 50 grand in cash like this before. So they're sitting there counting it out forever, making sure it's all there. And that's how I got into my house again. And I was able to go through a credit rebuilding thing and rebuild my credit, refinanced it, put it. I'm trying to remember if we put that one in my wife's name, and it took me a little longer to build mine up to get the next house.
Yeah, makes sense.
Wow,
Very cool.
that's incredible.
Just getting a little creative there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've got to do it. You just start, opening your mouth, talking to people.
Right.
And
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Right.
Just gotta find it. Get
Yeah.
creative.
So you joined the networking group, and then that's when business started to take off and get a little bit busier for you.
yeah,
And then how long was it before you hired your first employee? Didn't hire a partner this time.
that's right.
Right,
Never a
no
partner.
partners. This time we hired an employee.
So I did. I hired an employee, and my goal was to keep him busy. And it scares me because he can't do what I can do, right? So I'm giving him these jobs. It's taking him twice as long to do it. Not making as much money, but I'm like trying to coach him, train him the way that I do it, and then not go help him. but I'm giving him 100% of whatever work comes in to keep him busy. And that was my strategy, because of course I could do it better than him, but in my mind, but I had to do that to grow.
Yeah.
And so I started giving him everything, and then I'd advertise more best I could. I've come up with these postcards, mailing them out, start getting work. And I was able to eventually hire a second guy. And when it got busy enough, I was running calls too, but I'm the secretary. I'm answering, doing everything, booking it all, and keeping them busy. And it was scary, because I'm like, why didn't you do this or that? You know, and they're not making as much. And it was like trying to pay them and still pay me.
Right.
But it actually worked out pretty good through this networking group. It was all word of mouth, everything.
I like that you prioritized the work that they had, and you did that to help you grow, rather than you just taking all the work. You would have made more money,
Right.
but it wouldn't have grown, and you wouldn't have been able to create a business that had value in the eyes of somebody else.
Yep.
Right? Which we can talk about that
Yeah.
a little bit later. But that's incredible though. So you had the one employee, and then you hired the other, and then just kind of slowly just kept adding employees.
The hardest part is knowing that you could make more money doing it yourself, but still letting them do it, right? But it was just trying to coach them and train them how to do it to get the numbers up where they needed to be.
Is it just because you had kind of a bigger vision of where you wanted to take it?
Yep.
And so you just kind of stayed focused on that, rather than like, I'm going to jump in and try to make as much money as I can.
Yeah.
I'm focused on the vision of what I'm trying to create. I'm trying to build something.
Yep. And my whole purpose when I started this company was to never scream at my employees like I was my whole time learning plumbing, because it was the worst experience ever. But number two was to be able to treat them and pay them the most of anyone in town. That's my whole goal and purpose, to treat them good, pay them very well, and that way we retain them.
I love that.
That was my whole goal, and it still is. I'm trying to treat them the best that I possibly can.
And you started this business, did you say in 2012? Was that
No,
what it was?
2002.
2000? No, that was the original.
2002 was
Oh,
the first one.
Was the first one.
After the crash and everything else, this one was finalized the very end of 2010.
Oh.
So 2011.
Very end of 2010. Okay. Beginning of 2011.
Yep.
Okay. So you've got several employees then, and you're starting to kind of figure some things out.
Yep.
Did you go through some growth pains then?
For sure. So I finally get up to like 5 or 6 employees, right? And I'm just right there, and I just can't get over this hump. And I'm like growing, trying to push it, and I just can't figure it out. And if I could go back now, I mean, I could do it so much faster now, of course, but I'm like just still learning everything. So the smartest thing I ever did, and I should have done it years earlier, was hire a coach.
Oh, I love it.
Right?
Yep.
I started shopping around, and of course, I get this email all the time from this one guy, constantly, and I'm always watching it, and I just never did anything about it. And finally, I'm like, he sent one that caught me. It was different, and I'm like, I got to talk to him, and that was it. Once I hired him, Joe O'Grady changed my world, my whole life of my business. I hired him. I was paying him it was $1,750 a month, and for me at the time was like, holy crap, that's a lot of money every month.
Yeah.
And then he wants $6,000 to come out to my shop and train all my guys.
Yeah.
One-time fee, and I'm like, no way. But I did it, and he was able to. It changed my life. Like, he sat down with me in my office on my computer for one day, going over my P&L. Clueless. He's like going through my P&L, and I didn't know the numbers like I should at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was just shooting from the hip on everything.
This was like, what time frame was this?
So I had my business for about 5 to 6 years at the time.
5 to 6 years. Okay. So like
Yep.
2015, 2016, somewhere around there.
Yep.
Okay. Awesome.
So he came in, and when he showed me those numbers and told me where I needed to be and everything, it just blew me away, and I was just so frustrated with myself and everything, and trying to change everything at the same time. It was like drinking from a fire hose, and I'm like telling him to slow down. I can't do it. I'm trying to do everything, and I can't do any of it. So finally, he was able to show me how to focus on certain things and change a lot of things and do it correctly.
I love that, because a lot of times when people are faced with that, they think that I've got to just figure this out on my own. And that's the hardest way to figure it out. I mean, luckily there are people who have done everything pretty much, right? I mean, besides Elon Musk, right? But other than that, there are people who've done things before us that can really help, and we've got to find them, and we've got to be willing to pay some money for it to have them just show us and shortcut, like show me the path.
Yeah.
Because the path of trial and error just is very long, very expensive. And I've told several people, because I have different coaches in various things, like if I had to choose between making the car payment and a coach, I'll choose the coach. I don't care about the car. I can have a crappy car and that's fine. But the coach is who's going to actually make the biggest difference as far as changing the direction of life, because there's so many things that I just don't know.
Yeah.
And I need some help to be like, well, what about this? You didn't think about this, or what about that? You know?
Yeah. But also doing your research on your coaches and finding the right one. So I didn't
Yeah, that's a good
mention,
point.
before I found the right guy, I hired one prior.
Okay.
And his fee was like 15 grand, and he wanted it in sections for 1 year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that guy would reschedule my appointments. He wasn't in the construction world at all, but he was the wrong guy. I paid him way too much money.
Yeah.
And I told him I need a refund because he's canceling our appointments. He's changing it, and he didn't know anything. He wasn't holding me accountable. He wasn't doing his job at all. I don't know. It was just a huge mistake with him. I didn't do my research. I was just desperate for a coach, somebody to help me. And
So this guy didn't know the industry, but he was just like a business
coach.
Just a business coach. Okay.
Yeah. And when I fired him, I finally had enough, and I'm like, I'm not paying you another dime, and I need my money back because you haven't showed up. You haven't done anything for me. Fired him. He sat there and started crying, literally crying in front of me in my office.
Oh my gosh.
It's awkward.
I'm like, he's like, you can't do this. This will ruin me. I'm like,
Oh gosh.
dude, you suck.
I thought you knew business.
You suck. Like, you're canceling my appointments. You're rescheduling. His boss finally refunded me most of my money, but not all of it. And I found Joe O'Grady, the coolest dude ever. It changed everything.
I love that.
Now what made you keep going on that path when you had such a bad first experience? Because most people would have been like,
Yeah.
coaching sucks,
Right.
you know?
But other people were telling me, like, you need a coach. I'm like, I couldn't grow it anymore the way I was going. And so we found him, and I was here, and finally I was like, it took time. It wasn't overnight again, right? And I'm paying all this money, and I'm like, I'm not seeing the return, Joe. I need something. So he started coaching my guys and me and different things and changing. And finally, I was getting to the top of where I was at, where I could grow again.
What would you say, like, was the most valuable thing that he taught you?
Numbers. Number one thing.
Just know
Because I didn't
your
understand
numbers.
my numbers. If you don't know your numbers, how can you even grow? How can
Right.
you budget? I never even had a budget.
Well, and that's kind of what I was thinking earlier when you were talking about that. You know, I think in most cases, like entrepreneurs, they start as tradespeople, right? They have a skill, and they're really good at what they do, and so they're like, okay, well, I'm going to take this skill and then I'm going to start a business.
Yep.
But they don't know the first thing about business, and so there's such a learning curve, right? And so I was like, maybe that works in the service industry, but like in the food industry, you'd be done so fast because the costs are so high without really understanding your numbers and what your profit margins are and all of that.
Yeah. Well, I thought I was very profitable until he showed up, right? And I'm like, no, I'm not making money on anything.
Right. Well, that's great. Yeah.
And luckily I was able to make it and do okay. But once he finally came, it changed everything. I was able to scale my business, do it in a more professional way. And that's when I was able to grow.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
How long did that take of him working with you to where you've got that and you understand the numbers and you start seeing some growth there?
It took I mean, when I really noticed it, about a year on, honestly, but it was changing and it was improving slowly.
Hmm.
But after about a solid year with him coaching me, coming out to my shop from Florida with
Wow.
his team to coach us and train us on different things, um, after about a solid year, then I started to grow.
Yeah.
So it
Okay.
took time
Yeah.
and
So you're
paying
kind of
him.
just making little tweaks along the way until
Yep.
maybe everything, all the, it's like a puzzle, right? We're putting a little pieces in here at a time, and then finally when we put maybe
Right.
the last piece in, we start to really see
Yep.
a big difference as far as that goes. But it just takes some time.
Yeah, it does. It always takes time when I'm like the most impatient. I'm like, I just want it now,
Yeah.
Right?
right? But it does. And it's education, educating yourself.
Yeah.
That's key. And I didn't do that to begin with. I didn't know anything about business.
Mhm.
My family growing up, my dad worked and just a normal job, making 20 bucks an hour his whole life. Never pushed me to do anything more. And so this was all just on my own, just trying to figure it out.
Hmm.
I had no one to mentor me on that.
So you were taught to go and have a job
Yes.
and work for somebody.
Yep.
Okay.
So
What?
you have kids now. Like, did you teach them how to?
Right. So my son, when he actually, I always had all my kids on the job for
Oh,
sure.
okay.
When they were young, always bringing them. And then my son, he started working for me when he was 16 and went to the Dixie College. All high school kids, the school pays for their college, the trades school for them.
Mm.
Right. So if
Oh,
you get in it
awesome.
at 16, this college, the trade school will pay for them.
Now, what school is this?
Dixie Tech
Oh,
down
okay.
here.
Okay.
Awesome.
But any of them, wherever it's at, the trade school will pay for their college to get through the trade school, which is awesome. So it was all paid for. He's now working for another plumbing company up in Salt Lake, but that's what he does. And he's doing awesome at
Oh,
it.
that's great.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So he comes in, you learn all this stuff, the business starts to scale, and that's where you create something that has value in the eyes of somebody else.
Yeah.
All right. And so you had some interest from somebody else. Were you looking, were you planning on selling it at some point in time? Was that kind of what you were going, or you're like, I'm just going to keep building this and learning and just trying to do whatever I can, and
Yeah.
suddenly some opportunity.
So with my
comes
son,
up.
because he worked for me for a long time.
Okay.
And at the time, yeah, I'm gonna do this until I stop, and I'm gonna hand it down to him.
Oh, okay.
Right. That was the plan. And that's what he kind of wanted. He would tell everybody that. What are you going to do when you grow up? I'm going to have my dad's company. It's mine.
Yeah.
When he was younger, and things changed, of course. But yeah, we started doing very well, doing really good, growing our company. I think I had in 2022, we were doing like $5 million revenue, right? So
Good
we were
for
doing
you.
good. It was awesome. Had a lot of employees, and we were profitable. And
That's a far. I mean, that's far from where
oh,
being bankrupt,
yep.
right? Did you
Yeah.
think that you would ever hit that much?
No.
No?
I never thought I could get to that point. Never. Because I just didn't understand the business and how it ran. But once I had the coach, I'm like, oh, I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just have to say, so having experienced your company, so like on a personal level, I'm very picky about the work I do. And so my commercial realtor actually referred me to you, Kern.
Oh.
And so that was kind of like, I was like, okay, who's the best? I don't care as much about the cost, but like, I just want to make sure it's going to get done right, because I'm a personal believer that like quality matters when it comes to those kind of trades. So, you went in there and I was like, okay, like they seem like they know what they're doing and the service is really good. And so I just have to say, like from a personal standpoint, like I was very impressed. And then after that, so you put in like most of the stuff in my bakery, and then it was like right around Christmas time and we had a leak in the wall and it flooded the whole front. And I was like, oh my gosh, who's going to answer? Because it was in the middle of the night, like nobody's available.
Yeah.
So I was able to get you guys out there, and no one else could figure it out. And you guys got your little like scopes, and you're listening to the walls.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just have to say it was a great experience. So
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I
definitely worth the money that you got selling it. Like
Right.
great
it was
job,
many
guys.
years of trial and error, I'm sure, with some of that, just trying to figure out the right way of doing things,
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
Do you look back on those experiences that you had before that got you here, and are you grateful for them? Like, did they change the shape of where you were going to create something that maybe wouldn't have existed,
100%.
without going through those hard
Yeah.
times?
Going through losing everything, if I would have started this, it would be totally different. But it changed how I do everything going forward. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I would ever change it.
I think some people are so afraid to fail, right?
Yeah.
And failure is just kind of part of it. I was reading something the other day. I don't remember who it was, or maybe it was on a podcast, and they said the secret is just fail, 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 and then all of a sudden you succeed.
Yeah, right?
And it's not. And so many people are afraid for the failing part, that they just want to succeed. But sometimes that big success comes with failing, because
Yeah.
that's when you have so much growth is
Right.
during that time frame. And if you
Yeah.
don't fail, you don't learn those.
I learned so
Lessons.
much from it, right? Absolutely.
Mhm.
That's where I learned the most lessons, what not to do first,
Right.
and then figure it out and do it better.
So as an entrepreneur, like I think when you get to that point where you're like, okay, I've sold it, like at some point I'm gonna move on. Do you feel like you're just gonna like vacation the rest of your life, or are you the type that's like, okay, I already know kind of what I want to do next.
Yeah.
It's now it's
I
just
love
trying
to vacation, but no. Right? I
You
do.
can't sit still, right?
I
You're like,
cannot
okay,
sit still.
gotta do the
I'm
next thing.
always into something.
Yeah.
But so
Do you have an idea of what you want to do next?
so my goal is to build up enough real estate.
Okay.
So I'm getting into more real estate now, trying to get enough real estate to just have that residual income coming in
Right.
and do the long-term hold and get as many as I can.
Yeah, you've been very active in the
Yeah.
real estate investor group, and I'm hearing of these different deals that you're coming up with, because you bought a place in multi-unit in Oklahoma. Is that right?
Yep.
Was it in Oklahoma? Okay.
Yep.
And you've got several units out there
Right.
right now. And how's that going so far?
So before I bought that, I did buy one here local in St. George, my
Okay.
first deal ever. And I bought that first. And then I'm like, I don't know anything about this. So the first thing I did was I started going to these real estate groups here in town. And the first thing I did is I met Justin and I hired a coach immediately. Like, I'm not making that mistake
Right,
again, right?
I know this now. I got to go find somebody that knows what they're doing, but
Yeah.
research them, find the right one.
Yes, I hired me a coach immediately. And my first deal in town, I made 40 grand on the deal.
That's
which is
awesome.
killer.
Yeah.
In less than 6 months, it was a wholesale deal. I didn't know anything about wholesale homes or how that even worked, anything about it, but I bought one. At the time, I didn't even know what wholesaling was, but this guy says, yeah, it's for sale. It's not on the market. Let's do it. Bought it. Didn't even ask. And then I'm like, crap, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, you're like, I should probably ask next time.
But yeah, so then I was approached by another wholesaler. He says, Brett, I've got this portfolio deal, 9 homes in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And originally there was 12 homes, and we went through it, and I'm like, I like it. Let's do this. And we kicked one off because it was about to fall down, and the other 2, the owner ended up selling it to the renters. So we had 9 homes.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked up all 9 homes. On the average price of them all was like 40 grand a house.
Wow.
Wow.
But the coolest part about it is the seller finance. So they're seller financing it, and I'm paying this guy $1,400 a month for 9 homes,
Wow.
Wow.
and
So-
I can
so-
rent them
so
all out.
You're
for-
cash flowing off of those.
Yes. And day one, I'm cash flowing, and I hired a property manager that charges me 9% of the rent, and we're bringing in $6,500 a month
Wow.
before I pay her. But
That's great.
I love though that you jump in things before you may not know exactly how it all works, but you're like, I'm jumping in. Like there's not really much of a fear. You've learned to get past that and do it. And then once you're there, you're like, okay, now I got to figure out how to make this thing happen. Who can help me that knows what to do here?
Right. So, and Justin was getting mad at me because I was just buy it first and then aim, right? I'm like, shoot, then aim. Like, I'm just do it. Let's
like
do
it's
it.
worked
I'm
worked before.
Right? The deal looks good. I'm like, let's do it. And then I go, hey, Justin, how do I do this now? I already got it. He's like, you did what? Right? So I was a little back.
Like, I dive in, man.
Right? So I'm like, and especially now at my age, I'm like, I gotta get full in 100% because I'm late in the game. I gotta buy enough to start getting that money in the return. So whether it's worked out or not, these ones worked out really good. I've got a couple of really bad deals I'm working through, but yeah.
You got to learn those lessons in
Right.
this as well. You learn the lessons in the plumbing business.
Yeah.
Now it's time to learn the lessons in some of these, although you have a lot more skills now.
Yeah. And I'm trying to do it a little better this time with a coach, but I need to still slow down and work with him before I pull the trigger.
Yeah.
No.
So do you think you'll stick with real estate, or do you think you'll start another business down the road?
I think I could start another plumbing company and I could grow it so fast now. I already know I could, but I don't think I have it in me.
Yeah.
I'm really loving this real estate world.
Yeah.
Right? It's something that's got me excited again. I'm finding these homes, I'm doing some research, and I actually closed on my 10th one in Tulsa yesterday.
Awesome.
I got this house. It's 60 grand. I'm putting about 5 to 7 grand into fixing it up, putting it through government, Section 8. I can rent that out. She's going to have it rented out for $1,500 a month.
Nice. So it's just kind of a new challenge for you.
Yeah.
Right? You know the other one, you've been there, and you're like, okay, I want something that's a little new,
Yeah.
something fresh.
And it's exciting. Like, it's something I'm learning about. I'm still learning. I have way more to learn, but it's got me excited. I love it.
That's awesome.
If there's somebody that's young that's watching this, and I mean, you've taken them through just this amazing journey of having some success, having the wrong business partners, a huge crash, right? And then rebuilding it to where things are at now.
Yep.
What advice would you give them if they're 20 and they're just starting out?
Number one, find a good coach. 100%. If I had a coach to begin with on my first company, would have changed everything. But I just was doing it on my own.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask. And network is huge.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Network, talk to people, and hire a good coach. And just as much research and learning as you possibly can.
Looking at that journey, was it harder than you ever expected it to be?
Yeah. From the beginning, yeah. It was tough. We went through some really hard times, definitely. And I had no coach, no one to ever, I just did it all on my own. I never asked. I didn't reach out for help. It wasn't me until I decided to change that and do that.
I think it's always harder than you expect. It's always more expensive than you expect.
Yeah.
It always takes longer than you expect.
Yeah.
But if you're relentless about it and you just stick with it and you're willing to learn and be coached, right?
Yeah.
Be coachable, then at some point in time you figure it out and it kind of happens.
And then just do it. Why just don't wait?
Yeah.
Just if you find a deal, just do it. Like, I'm all in. Like,
Unless Justin's like, wait a minute, slow down a little bit. And you're like, no.
I walked through a house yesterday in Cedar City and I put an offer in. I'm like pushing them to take that offer down. I'm like, let's do it. I'm in. I haven't even told Justin about it.
Well, he'll be here soon.
Brett, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I mean, you've got, just a wealth of knowledge there, and I loved hearing the stories. And I think those who watch this, there's just some incredible stories or incredible takeaways. So, again, thank you so much for coming on this.
For sure. Thank you.